In recent years, the Christian evangelical community has proven to be one of the major foundations of global political support for Israel. Now, that fervor finds, I would say, institutional expression in the Knesset Christian Allies Caucus. It's sort of umbrella group linking together evangelical backers of the Jewish state from 42 countries with a group of Israeli lawmakers representing 7 political parties in parliament. Now, the caucus usually holds a relaunch event with every new session of the Knesset that brings to Israel global religious and political leaders. But this year, of course, the coronavirus made that impossible. So instead, the Friends of Zion Museum in Jerusalem has organized a virtual relaunch of the KCAC, as it's called. And joining us now from Dallas, Texas, is the museum's founder and CEO, Dr. Mike Evans, who also serves on President Trump's Evangelical Faith Initiative. Thanks for joining us, Mike. Let me just ask you first about the challenge of organizing this relaunch event, usually, of course, so enthusiastic, and an in-person pilgrimage to Jerusalem, and having to do it on the virtual plane.
Well, the virtual plane is a much bigger plane. You know, we've got 73 million followers just on our platform alone. And I've also linked this to all the faith advisors to the president. There's 25 of them. So it's a big deal. It's the new age. It's the 21st century, and it works.
Right. Now, give us a sense, Mike, for evangelicals or Christian supporters of Israel. Some may not define themselves that way. What kind of issues are on their minds? What would they be discussing right now in terms of getting together and speaking either with their Israeli counterparts, or Israeli lawmakers, I should say, or among their own ranks?
Well, I think the number one, there's 2 issues. Number one is a security issue. The evangelicals are very worried right now because of all the internal drama going on in Israel. When you have Israeli politicians fighting and insulting one another, when you have people on the streets protesting, and corona, it sets up a perfect storm for Israel's enemies vis-a-vis Iran, Hezbollah. And this is very dangerous, very dangerous. It's not the time for this type of thing because Israel's soft underbelly is exposed.
Right. Now, Mike, I want to ask you, I know evangelicals are not you're united, or those Christians in the group are united in their support for Israel. They're not monolithic politically. Now, one issue, of course, has been Israel's annexation plans for the West Bank, and I have heard some voices, differing voices, but I think it's fair to say it is a position that most evangelicals support. And I want to get to your response to the fact that it almost seems to have been dropped from the agenda, surprisingly, by both the Netanyahu government and to some degree even by the Trump administration.
Well, I don't really think so. Number one, we are monolithic on one issue. Genesis 12, I will bless them that bless thee and curse them that curse thee. Now, Bible believers believe that Israel is Bible land and that the Bible is not illegal. Bible believers don't believe in annexation. They believe in sovereignty. It's the same thing as East and West Germany. They believe this is Israel's land. Now, I believe the president is going to come out before November 3rd. He's going to say the Bible is not illegal. This is Bible land. And Israel has to determine its sovereignty. Number one, he did it at the UN. At his last UN speech, he said, democracies have to defend their sovereignty.
Mike, why would he wait before November 3rd? Why would the president say that now? It was a bit surprising, for example, to hear Secretary Pompeo, who's close to the evangelical community and may even define himself as such, not mention the annexation issue in a recent speech he gave dealing with Israel issues.
Well, I think if you think about Harry Truman, why did Harry Truman recognize Israel? Because he was in a political race. I think the president knows he won the election because of the evangelical vote, and he needs 100% of that vote this time. And the way to get it, the way to get the 100% is recognize the Bible is not illegal. Listen, I know my base. I've got 73 million of them. If he comes out and says that, their hearts will fill with such passion like they did on the recognition of Jerusalem. So politically, it's the wisest thing he could ever do.
Right. Let me ask you, because you do serve on the president's council there that we mentioned, his Faith Initiative. How do you feel that evangelical support for the president is remaining rock solid, as firm as it was going into the 2016 race, given a lot of the other events that are happening there in the U.S.?
Yeah, I think so. You know, number one, evangelicals didn't stand behind the president because they wanted him to be their pastor in chief or their counselor in chief. They know Donald Trump is authentic and that he's Donald Trump all the time. But what we wanted from Donald Trump is two things: the right to life and a pro-Israel stance. And he's exceeded all of our expectations. And I believe he'll do it also before November 3rd.
Right. I'm just curious, because you do speak with other people in the administration, Secretary Pompeo, for example, I know. I mean, do you feel that support, that fervor, that same position is shared by those closest to the president?
Oh, absolutely. Listen, it's the first time in history you had an evangelical Secretary of State, an evangelical Vice President, and these guys are rock solid evangelicals, and a president who celebrates evangelicals. Listen, this is the first president in American history who held a state dinner in honor of evangelical leadership. I know I was at it, and I spoke briefly at it. He's an astonishing president who really listens carefully to the evangelicals.
All right. Well, Mike Evans, founder, of course, CEO of the Friends of Zion Museum in Jerusalem, if you haven't visited yet, and, of course, member of the Knesset Christian Allies Caucus, going onto the virtual realm this year for its annual relaunch. And thank you for joining us virtually from Dallas, Texas.